Hello and welcome back. Up next, we have Jude Poorten. Jude Poorten is a guitarist, composer, and educator from Phoenix, Arizona. His music, inspired by his hometown and upbringing, combines folk, jazz, and classical elements. He completed his undergraduate studies at Berklee School of Music. Notably, he has performed at the Panama Jazz Festival and has shared the stage with Tony Malaby, Francisco Mela, and John Clayton. Jude's committee member is Professor of Harmony and Jazz Composition, Alan Chase. His advisor is Assistant Chair of Ensembles, Gregory Groover Jr. Please welcome to the stage, Jude Poorten.
Hello, check. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to my presentation. My project is called Beautiful, Cruel Country, and it's a culmination of all the hard work I did this year to create a new relationship with my music-making process. Throughout this year, I went deep into a study of the history of my home state of Arizona, and I reflected on how that history has come to shape who I am. This story starts with my grandfather, right here. It's me and him. My idea for the project came when he showed me some of his favorite country musicians, such as Marty Robbins and Waylon Jennings. These are them. I quickly found out that many of these people grew up or spent a large portion of their lives in Phoenix like me. That got me interested in tracing back their musical lineage and learning about my local history, which ultimately led me to the folk music of the Cowboys. In their songs, this is some of my favorite ones, actually. In their songs, I love their way of telling a narrative with vivid imagery, characters, and morals. Their stories were about their experiences on the open plains, and music was a kind of medicine used to heal from pain, grief, and loneliness. But at the same time, it was haunting to see that many of the songs touched on a dark reality of the history of westward settlers, and that's their encounters with the Native American tribes. In reality, many white settlers moving west brought with them destructive force, killing millions of Native Americans. These songs often told the story of this violence without much care for the reality of this truth. So that includes this one that particularly stood out to me, and that was a big inspiration for the whole project. So I want to play that for you. It's a 1929 recording of Billy Maxwell singing a traditional song called Billy Venero.
Billy Venero heard them say in an Arizona town one day that a band of Apache Indians were upon the trail of death. Heard them tell of murder done, 3 men killed at Rocky Run. They're in danger at the car range, said Venero under breath.
This song goes on to tell the story of a cowboy named Billy Venero trying to get to his loved one in a nearby town but being killed while on the trail. As tragic as this story is, we can't really listen to this song now without a dark cloud of our country's true history floating above us. From this, I realized that there could be so much potential for healing by using this format of storytelling to retell the stories, this time with the intention of justice for the people whose culture was nearly erased. This could repair damage done by oppressive forces that not only erased entire cultures and their contribution to local history, but also created a population, even at times including myself, that is often so unwilling to come face to face with a generational cycle of violence and the toll that it takes on one's own soul. Even beyond being connected to this specific history, this is a vital process for looking at my own history and my family's history and all the things we've overcome together. The first song is called Beautiful Cruel Country and is named after this book by Eva Antonia Wilbur Cruz. This book is about an old woman telling her childhood story of growing up on a ranch in southern Arizona. She learned many lessons as she grew older, especially how to interact and care for the land, how to get along with her neighbors. She lived right next to a few different Native American tribes, and though they didn't get along perfectly, her family always lived in harmony with them. So here it is. Thank you. So this year, imagery was an important part of our musical process. I was always joking about having the band pretend to be cowboys riding horses on an open prairie or sitting around the campfire telling stories. In this next song called Forgotten Blues, we really did improvise that with mine. You'll hear Andre on the drums playing rattlesnakes and tumbleweeds on the drums, which we talked about. And we use imagery of the mysterious places you find in old Western movies like ghost towns and old saloons. Also, it's important for me to say that the blues was an important part of my upbringing. So I really want to honor the Black American contribution to country music with this. So here's Forgotten Blues. I wish I could show you more, but that's the beginning. So there's a town in the west, in Arizona actually, which is infamous for gunfights, gambling, and all these kind of things you see mythicized in Western movies. And that city is actually called Tombstone. And I visited there when I was in, I think, 7th grade. In this next song, I wanted to come face to face with the myths of the Wild West. So I created a song about what it means to be a true hero. In many old Western movies, the hero is one who seeks revenge and shoots down the enemy. I set out to create a story where the character becomes a true hero when they confront their grief and become something greater than they were taught or expected to be. This is a story that starts with imagery of war, created by the march in the bass line and snare pattern. The ending is heroic. It's a celebration of overcoming one's own trauma, showing hope for a future where we do not continue to pass on the wounds we've been handed down generation after generation. Yeah. This last song is called Gone But Not Forgotten. Those were the words written on the gravestone of the songwriter Carl Sprague, whose picture I showed briefly earlier. I wrote this song as a way of healing and a reminder to have patience during hard times. It is about remembrance of the beautiful stories to aid us as we try to create a future that's not as cruel as our past. I used a canon to create a feeling of togetherness despite our differences. Thank you. So that's about it. I'm at the end. I want to start by acknowledging that. I want to start by acknowledging that this project was greatly inspired by elder friends in Phoenix, and they went down a similar path as this actually before me. And it almost feels like there's a movement of my friends who graduated from school learning how to play jazz, and then they started playing this music that was around, but not often taught in school. So I think collectively there's a sense that there isn't room for this local music institutions, but I now want to acknowledge that there's hardly a place for any of the rich backgrounds that are part of local Arizona history in school. Not just country music, of course, but Native American and Mexican music too. So I want to create a space for kids of any background to learn and integrate their local music in education. I want to expand to write music for specific musicians local to Arizona who play different kinds of local music, such as, for example, the great Native American flute player Carlos Nakai. Then I can bring this music to concert venues there. And I hope that those musicians that I work with can partner with schools that I went to in order to make sure that kids learn about the local music that they grew up around. And that's it. Here's my bibliography and my acknowledgments. Thank you to Gregory Groover. You've been such a help to me. Alan Chase gave me so many resources in such a short amount of time and has been really supportive. And actually John Dixon is someone who he hooked me up with and gave me some CDs to listen to. Thank you so much, Danilo, for everything over the years. And Marco, I wish he was here, but he's seen this. And my band was incredible. Brian, Bell, Nick, Andre, Peter, and Renat. And I learned so much from every one of my classmates at Global. I couldn't have done anything close to this without them. Thank you to my family. Willow and Terry are here to support. And all my mentors over the years, going back to my first guitar teacher, Brett Phillips, to other people, Mike Coker, Jeff Libman, Eric Rasmussen, Mick Goodrick, Berta Rojas, Ben Street, Joe Lovano, John Patitucci. And that's it. Thank you.
Wonderful presentation, Jude. Thank you so much. I would like to take the word to our panelist, Mr. Alan Chase.
Okay. Thanks so much. Beautiful music. I really, really enjoyed that. I want to play that last song. And I was moved by your whole presentation. I feel very close to it because I'm from the same place, and I appreciate being asked, that you asked me to be your panelist. A lot I could say, but I wanted to ask you if you could, some things you shared with me that were really interesting that I'd love to hear more about are a little deeper, just analysis of some of the musical content of the pieces and how that relates to the topic and feelings that you talked about. And I was thinking about the rhythms that come from the Mexican music, including a version of the clave that we know from the Caribbean, Afro-Caribbean music, and the blues. There's some sort of interesting, unique pitch material in the blues, and there's some really interesting things about the harmony of the last tune. I mentioned this to you, I love that you did a 2-beat canon in 3/4. It really creates a poignant feeling, and I think it really represents that feeling that you said about people with differences coming together, But there's something about the notes in that. So could you tell us more about some of the content of those pieces? Yeah.
So musical analysis. So I'll start with that blues. I have I actually started with this scale. I was honestly never going through years of the program. I never was able to start with a intellectual concept and then create a story. But I think I finally was able to do it a little bit, and now I'm hopefully going to do it more and more as I go on. But this scale has a flat 2, natural 3, sharp 4, 5, natural 6, and flat 7. And I felt like that was a very kind of mysterious sound. And the bottom tetrachord is so much blues in there. So I used that, and I used the 12-bar form as normal. And there's a 2-bar rhythmic cycle that it looks complicated, but it's kind of just like a call and response, I feel like. And I use those notes. So now we have on the 4 chord, it's now a sharp 4, which I think normally people will call that a tritone sub, but it's not, because I think it's subdominant really to me is just moving away from home. So I think I still got that feeling, even though it's a sharp instead of A. Yeah, and that's the blues. One thing I wanted to point out, I want to say that the aspect of bringing in diverse musical influences is very at its beginning stage in this project, and I want to keep going with that. But one thing I could honestly say that I did for real is I loved this this music I found called Ensemble Zarahuato. It's a folkloric Mexican group. And I found this song that really, it's called El que siembra su maíz, which means the one who picks corn. You can hear the cowboy in there, I think. And I use that. So there's an instrument playing there called the tiple. Interestingly, I think something I found is I heard tipple. Some people called it the tipple, and then some people called it the tiple. Because it's actually used in country music. And it's from, I believe some people said it's from Colombia. So I used that. One of the things orchestrationally I did was I combined like an octave thing with a violin and the cello to simulate the octave strings on that instrument. And I used some of the patterns that I found in that song. So, and also in the solo section, I realized later that I had two corners of the triangle of the three-tonic system, and I didn't know what to do with this song forever, and then I finally remembered Danilo's class. I connected the third point of the triangle, and I think it made it into like a really like a developed story where I could actually hear the development of brightening and darkening in this. And then lastly, the only thing I could say about this song, I didn't think intellectually about this one much at all, but I wanted to point out that things like in a G major song, that when you have C sharp minor 7 flat 5 to F sharp 7, normally, and you might hear people call that a 5/7 of 3 or something, and in classical music you might have like notes like that, B flat, which is actually an A sharp. You might have that there and used as a chromatic note, but when you're thinking with the blues, now that is not a chromatic note. It's part of what you can hear and use emotionally. So I think that's a path I want to keep going down with my music, to use those notes as not an accidental, but the notes. Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I have to say about the music.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I would like to invite Advisor Gregory Groover Jr.
Thank you. And Dr. Chase, I'm glad you brought this up because there's so much in Jude's music that I think because it naturally has this simplistic rolling along vibe to it that you would miss it if you don't call it out. And maybe that's the point. I think some of the best music that we all experience is that we're not listening for these things, right? It's happening and you're enjoying it and it takes you to a place. So I'm glad that you did ask him to investigate it, because there's all these little things in there that until I looked at your charts and your orchestration with you, I had no idea what was going on. Could be me just not picking up on it, but I think more importantly it speaks to the great writing that you do. While I get into it, I do want to just, before I start with some of my notes, want to commend you and congratulate you. It's been a joy for me to be working with you in this capacity. I didn't know you well at all before this, really, just kind of from afar. And I, unlike Alan, I've actually never been to Arizona, right? So you took me on this journey with you right from the beginning. And I think the power of your music, as I was mentioning earlier, there's some deep imagery in there. There's great storytelling. It honors your findings, your history of the land, what you want to explore, all while also being unique to you and some of your influences. We talked about that ripping soul that you took, on one of the tunes that I was like, man, yeah, that's so great that you got in there. So you weren't afraid to throw a lot of you in the music, but you still honored it. And there, at no part, I actually wrote this out, I appreciate that your commitment to getting into and then staying into this musical character. You think about like method acting, right? Folks who don't break character at all. when I listen to this music, there's not a point where it feels like, oh, well, we're no longer in Arizona or no longer on this journey. But the cool thing is there's still hints of who you are as a musician that's all throughout. And you did a really great job of staying in character while also throwing in some of the other unique offerings that you bring to the table as a brilliant guitarist, great jazz musician, and all the above. So I just want to commend you on that. One thing that I am interested in and would love to for you to talk a little bit more about what this looks like. So obviously you're exploring a complex part of our history, right? And then anytime you do that, how do you tell that story? How do you honor all those involved? How do you tell both sides of the story and tell it accurately from both your perspective as well as you're doing this study? But what I'm maybe so interested in, and we had spoken about this early on in the journey, was how do you keep this work going, right? So going into schools, making sure that other students are having the same unique offering, everything that you've got here at Global and everything at Berklee, to explore the history of this music, but then also the local musicians who have a story there. And what does that look like? Some of the local chapters that you spoke about at the end, like, is it a jam session that's combining the youth there and the elder musicians, or, you know, because there's a lot of space in this music in the format that you've written it, where I feel like if you're an advanced jazz player, you can get totally in there. And then if you're just strumming on the guitar and know a little bit about music, but you have so much weight behind your sound, you can get it there too. So what does that look like, the next steps? How do you continue to plan this either in schools or among the local musicians and keep this story going?
Yeah, that's a great question. Thank you for asking, and thank you for your nice comments. That's something I'm still trying to figure out, definitely. But what I know for sure is that there needs to be a communal aspect of even cross-culturally in that environment, because that's, I think, what was lacking maybe from the beginning, that didn't allow me to access this part of myself as much as I was able to in this environment. And I think the environment that was created this year for me was one that of where we were able to all trust each other and be able to bring out a part of ourselves that you're normally scared to. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but I know I would have to create a community where everyone has given authority to be themselves. And I think that's going in a more concrete way. I think that's going to look like, yes, maybe getting together with people of kind of different backgrounds. Even though we're all, the interesting part of it is not that global. We're all in the same place. That's what my thought about this music was. But it is because we're all coming from different places, like culturally. So I would like to just create a space where that, I think sometimes it happens in local venues there, but I think there's always the weight of, we have to be a jazz musician, or from other perspectives, maybe like, of course there's the political perspective of, no, my music is can't be tainted by different cultural things. So we have to address that seriously. But it's really about creating an environment of learning from each other, because we're all coming from a background of there's something you don't know that you're lacking, that you need to get from someone who you disagree with. And that's what I got this year, actually.
Right on. Well, I just want to say one more time, congratulations. You should be extremely proud. Beautiful music. And one last thing, as I told you earlier, the orchestration, the instruments you chose were phenomenal. And I can't hear it any other way, but I don't know that I would have picked those instruments in that way. So congrats. Yeah.
Thank you, Jude, and thank you, Gregory. Maestro Danilo Perez, any questions or comments?
Just tell how impressed I am working with you through the years, and every lesson we had in those studios a couple years ago or a year and a half ago, and see how much you were into experimenting. I remember those odd rhythm class. Do you remember that, playing 5/4 and doing some crazy stuff
Yeah.
with kids together?
Definitely.
And you know, the beauty about all of that is like that you always have this disposition to experiment, and you still do. And even the really situation we have in Panama with the question about the blues. And when I came back, and I'm so intense about the blues, what is the blues? What is the blues? And really what I wanted to encourage you all to think of the blues as a phenomenon of new knowledge. It changed the dynamic of that European 1-2-5-1. Now we have 1-2-5-1-7. And you're adding all these new colors and all this new stuff. And, you know, as you point out in there, that B flat, you're hearing that a part of what's coming next. Those two bars are in G major, kind of inverted. And I just want to end that I'm feeling with your music a quote that I heard from Lester Young, that he says, I just want to find a sound. I want to find a sound that I can drag chords with me. And congratulations, because you are doing it. There's so many little detours here, beautiful voice leading, and a commitment to looking for the quest of wisdom in your sound. So I'm proud to have worked with you. I wish you all the best, and this is your home. A lot of people go through global, they walk through it, they have a great experience, but you came here and stepped on the floor and left your fingerprint. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Big round of applause to Jude.